Welcome back to Outriders. In this video I want to talk to you about why I believe this game is the definition of failed money grab. Starting off from the very beginning, when the game released, what did People Can Fly go and do? They instantly went and bought a brand new studio, and it come out that they were working on 2 completely new games. So it feels as though they have dropped a lot of their developers from Outriders, because the game has been neglected since it launched, and major updates have been taking several weeks to release. Some taking 8, 9, even 10 weeks. Even the minor updates are taking a month at a time to release. Within the first week of the release of the game, they started nerfing character classes into the ground, and the lead up to the game, which was obviously part of the marketing, they stated that they're not going to be jumping in with loads of nerfs and stuff, and instantly, 1 week after launch, they had nerfed all the character classes that were using the special bullets. We are now almost 6 months into the game, and there has been no new content, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because a lot of companies do take their time, which is good for them to take their time, because sometimes it will mean that the content will have a lot more value to it for the player. However, when the developers finally released the player appreciation package, which took them like 9 weeks to release, they put a little teaser in the top corner saying new content coming soon. And we're talking a good couple of months back, and there's still not been anything shown in regards to this new content. As I said, with major and minor updates taking forever, the update they're currently working on has been a month. The update previous, it was a month. They just keep delaying their updates, saying going through the processes and all that sort of stuff is taking a lot longer than they're anticipating. But to have a patch, a small patch, because they're not doing pretty much anything to it, they're fixing bugs. It's taken a month at a time to get this stuff out. And a lot of the times, they say they've got all these QA testing teams and all this sort of stuff, so quality assurance. And then when the patches do release, they make the game worse in several areas. So it's almost as if the testing teams don't actually exist. And then another one, Stadia. That's supposed to get a patch very soon, but when they do get it, because it's in the works, I think it's actually part of the upcoming patch. When they do get it, it will be, from what I believe, the very first Stadia update, and it's going to bring it in line with other platforms. And then we also have the developers moaning about not getting royalties. I've seen several articles about this, and I did a little bit of research and looked into it, and People Can Fly have said they didn't receive any royalties from Square Enix. But Square Enix have said, well, you're not getting any royalties because the game hasn't made any profit. You'll get your wages, all that sort of stuff, but in terms of the royalties, it's like a bonus for making a good profit on the game for all the developers. And they haven't made a profit on the game, so there will be no royalties to pay. And then after all of that, they're wanting royalties, and what are they doing? They're turning their player base away, and they seem to think for whatever reason that nerfing is the right idea of stopping the game from being unfun and boring. They don't think nerfing is going to make the game even more boring than it already is for a lot of players. So overall, I believe their plan was to release the game through loads of marketing and stuff, make loads of sales, make money, and then pile that money into other projects and just not bother with Outriders. Because it seems as though there's a really, really small team working on this. If you look at the Division 2 and the history, as people started leaving and moving on to other projects, you could tell that they were pretty much working with a skeleton crew, a B team of developers. And it seems as though that's been happening with Outriders from the very first day of release. It wouldn't surprise me if the team was no bigger than 5 or 6 people. Another thing I find very weird about this game is how they put out patch notes and then they say, oh, we've got upcoming notes and all this sort of stuff, nothing's final. And there's a lot of stuff that's incredibly important to the player base that's left, a lot of stuff that's important for them to know, but instead they are dedicating entire articles to the past, present and future of a single mod that's in the game, that they are nerfing, that players don't want to be nerfed. And all the time they are constantly asking for community feedback. They've put out full-on survey questionnaires about what's your character class, what platform you on, what's your address, what time do you go for a pee during the day. They got really, really in-depth with their questionnaires. And what happens? None of the feedback from the community actually mattered because they never listened. They are just constantly nerfing stuff, and like, if there's PvP involved, go ahead, nerf it, balance it, do what you've got to do. But in a PvE only game, they shouldn't be focusing on this. Like, their entire focus at the moment is sorting out the Fortress mod. They don't want Fortress to be powerful enough for people to consistently run gold times on expeditions, so they want to balance it. And they say, like, as I said, they dedicated an entire Developer News Thursday to the Fortress mod and their plans with it. And all they said about other things coming up and being buffed is we'll have more news in the future. If you're going to focus on a nerf, you also need to focus on a buff or a couple of buffs and tell the players what you're going to be working on to make the experience better. Leading with just a nerf and explaining nothing else when you've gone into that much depth with the nerf, it's just going to annoy people and push people away from the game. And in terms of pushing people away from the game, I've been keeping an eye on the Steam charts, so just across Steam on PC, and they are struggling to reach 800 concurrent players in a 24-hour window. And we're talking about a game that's coming up to 6 months old, or coming up to being 6 months old. It's at a low of, like, Avengers numbers. And Avengers started flopping quick, and it got down, and it's consistently around like 600 to 1,000 roughly. And that's what Outriders is sitting at, less than 6 months after launch. Published by the same company, the company that didn't learn anything, being Square Enix. Developed by a completely different company that just seemed to have the same sort of, like, thinking. Like, they don't understand what the player wants from the game. Avengers constantly releasing skins that cost real money, not putting any thoughtful content into the game. Outriders not buffing enough for the player and making it balanced, but instead focusing on heavy nerfs, teasing DLC or new content, and not doing anything about it. The one thing I'm really concerned about is when Fortress does get nerfed, even if it's in a year's time, and they do buffs for other things in the same update, is it going to be substantial buffs, or is it going to be like cooldown stuff and things like that they've done in the past? They really need to change their focus and think about what the player base want. What's going to bring the players back to this game? The very first thing is remove the timer off expeditions. The next thing is fix the matchmaking. With good matchmaking and no timers on expeditions, you can guarantee there is at least 4 to 5 times more people playing the game in any 24-hour window on Steam. Like, I guarantee from 800 they'll go up to at least 4,000 concurrent players if they just fix the matchmaking, bought the proper servers to actually make it a stable connection, and if they just remove the timer from expeditions. Just let people run the expeditions, get some good loot, that's all they need to do. They would, like I say that, they would have to release new content alongside that right now. That's something they should have done before the game even launched. They should have had good matchmaking in there. They should not have ever thought of having an entire end game, whether it's supposed to be a one-off, like one and done thing or not. They should never have brought them timers into expeditions for the entire end game. Maybe Eye of the Storm, the Drought Palace, whatever they're called. I think it's Scorched Lands and the Colosseum. You know, the big final, like, tier 15, tier 14, 13, 12, whatever. Them final ones that get really close to the Eye of the Storm, the ones that actually cost you drop pod resources to get into, those ones maybe should have had timers on them, but the rest of them, I don't believe they should have done. As I said about matchmaking, still completely awful after 6 months, and they haven't even spoken about it recently. It's been left to what it was a month or so ago when they released the last update, and it's just not working. You get yellow bar, red bar, you get like constant disconnections and stuff. Party joining failures been a bug for the entire launch of the game. And not only that, they used to be fairly active on Twitter. They'd put out a post and then they'd sit there and they would reply to people from the community. You get nothing like that anymore. When they put out their Developer News Thursday about Fortress, the mod in the game that they're nerfing, they put it out. There's lots of people with lots of different opinions and thoughts. They haven't replied to a single person. I think there's probably, or possibly, 1 or 2 community managers for this entire game, across all platforms, all forums, everything. And I honestly don't think there's any more than 10 developers working on it. I think they've actually upped and left Outriders, and they're moving on to their next game. Maybe it might not be People Can Fly's fault, it might be Square Enix. Because both companies are working together on another game, and Square Enix said that Outriders is becoming a major franchise. They are like set to release both these new games they're working on by 2024, so within 3 years. And I believe one of them might be Outriders 2, because of Square Enix saying it's a franchise, because of them just making a new game and working with Square Enix. It is kind of like putting the puzzle together, the pieces fit. It's not a guarantee that's actually what's going to happen. It might not be Outriders 2, it might be something completely different, but People Can Fly are working with Square Enix. Square Enix have said the game's a major franchise, so it kind of just makes sense for it to be Outriders 2. But they're not going to get many sales at all, just purely based on the fact that everything they've done for the last 6 months is just wrong in terms of the community, the consumer, the people that buy the game. They haven't done anything. They went from 125k concurrent players in like the first couple of days of launch, 4 days of server issues straight out of the gate, and they've gone in less than 6 months from 125k down to around 800 concurrent players in a 24-hour window. It is not good at all. I honestly think they need to drop the Fortress mods, nerf, they need to sort out the matchmaking, remove the timers off the expeditions, add new content into the game, which is a lot of hard work, so it's probably not going to happen, especially if they have a small dev team working on the game. But you never know. It might happen. Probably not, like highly unlikely that it will ever happen. But you do never know. What we're going to do on that note is leave the video there. Let me know your thoughts and stuff in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. I hope you guys enjoyed it.